Hello, miladies of inestimable value. Not everything that shines is gold. Sometimes it's just polished fear wearing lipstick. Alpha females are often praised as the unstoppable force of modern society, commanding rooms, shaping trends, and rallying followers. But here's the twist that most people never notice. What the world applauds as raw confidence often hides layers of fragility, strategy, and performance. In fact, psychology shows that the loudest personalities are statistically more likely to mask deep insecurities with exaggerated dominance. And this is where the Sigma female comes in. Unlike everyone else hypnotized by the alpha's charisma, the Sigma female has the rare lens to see past the glitter. She catches the cracks others mistake for brilliance, the masks others confuse for faces, and the performances others applaud as authenticity. It's like watching a magic show. You can clap with the crowd, or you can stand at the back of the room quietly spotting the wires. The Sigma female doesn't envy the alpha. She studies her, sometimes with sharp intrigue, sometimes with quiet amusement, and yes, sometimes with that subtle smirk that says, "I know exactly what you're hiding under all that glitter." This isn't about tearing alpha females down. It's about revealing what only a Sigma's vision can catch. Truths so raw, they flip the entire narrative upside down. And once you see them, you'll never look at an alpha female the same way again. Number 1. Their strength often masks dependency on weak followers. Alpha females often look powerful because of the way they carry themselves, the way people orbit around them, and the confidence they project. But what a Sigma female notices, and what almost no one else ever catches, is that this power often depends on carefully surrounding themselves with people who are weaker, more submissive, or easily influenced. It's not always intentional in the beginning, but over time it becomes a pattern. Alphas build their empire by stacking it with people they can dominate, rather than equals who might challenge their authority. A Sigma female sees this clearly because she doesn't play by the same rules. She doesn't need followers to feel validated, so she has no reason to keep people around just to reinforce her position. She notices how alphas often thrive when others are leaning on them, but struggle when surrounded by equally strong personalities. A group of equals would expose cracks in the alpha's control, so instead, she creates an environment where loyalty looks like dependence and strength is quietly filtered out. The Sigma female also notices the cost of this strategy. When an alpha fills her circle with people who are weaker, she's never truly tested. She's praised, followed, admired, but rarely pushed to grow. The applause becomes an echo chamber that convinces her she's invincible, while her leadership is actually being propped up by the very people she's afraid to lose. Without them, the image of strength would crumble. It's almost ironic. Alphas appear to be leaders of the strong, but many times, they're just the tallest figure in a room full of people sitting down. Sigma females see through this illusion and sometimes find it quietly amusing. They recognize that real strength doesn't need weaker company to shine. It grows sharper in the presence of equals. That's why the Sigma female isn't drawn to dominance games. Her power exists whether anyone is watching or not. What makes this observation so compelling is that most people see the alpha as unshakable. But the Sigma sees the scaffolding holding her up, a network of dependents who mistake admiration for strength. And once you notice the scaffolding, the illusion of power never looks the same again. Number 2, they're performing a role they can't retire from. Alpha females are often celebrated for their charisma, their ability to command attention, and the way they seem to thrive at the center of every stage. But what a Sigma female notices, and what most people completely miss, is that the alpha is locked inside a role she can never really step out of. It starts as a choice, building influence, shaping an image, setting herself apart. But after a while, the role takes over. She becomes the persona. And the terrifying truth is that once the spotlight defines her, she no longer has the freedom to simply walk away from it. The Sigma female sees this trap clearly. Alphas work so hard to maintain their image of strength, control, and perfection that they leave themselves no space to be ordinary. Vulnerability becomes a liability. Silence looks like weakness, and even a small slip in confidence feels like a betrayal of everything they've built. The alpha becomes her own prisoner, chained to the expectation that she must always be fierce, always untouchable, always one step ahead. And while everyone else is dazzled by the performance, the Sigma quietly recognizes the exhaustion underneath. This is where the difference between the two archetypes becomes stark. A Sigma female doesn't need a stage. She can step in and out of the spotlight without losing herself, because her identity isn't tied to applause or recognition. She can walk away without feeling like she has collapsed. The Alpha, on the other hand, can't. She's built so much of her identity on being the one in charge that stepping back feels like death to her persona. The performance can never end because her power exists only as long as the audience believes it. The Sigma female finds this both fascinating and sad. She sees how much pressure it creates, how heavy the crown becomes, and how quickly the performance stops being a choice and turns into a cage. Others look at the Alpha and see freedom. The Sigma looks deeper and sees the weight of someone who can never truly rest, because the moment she does, the mask begins to slip. And for the Alpha, the mask has become the only face she has left. Number 3. Their friendships are more about utility than loyalty. Alpha females are often admired for their big networks and their ability to pull people into their orbit. But what a Sigma female notices is that these relationships are rarely built on deep loyalty. They are built on utility. To the Alpha, friendships often serve a function: access, influence, validation, or reinforcement of her position. Her circle becomes less about genuine connection and more about strategic alignment. And while this might look like power to outsiders, the Sigma sees the fragility behind it. The Sigma female notices that Alphas don't just attract people, they collect them, almost like assets. Each person has a role to play in the Alpha's story, and as long as they serve a purpose, they're kept close. But the moment that purpose fades, so does the friendship. It's not always cruel in an obvious way. Sometimes it's subtle: less communication, fewer invitations, a slow fading away. But the message is clear: if you're not useful, you're no longer essential. The Alpha's loyalty is conditional. This is where the Sigma female stands apart. She doesn't operate by transaction, so she notices the mechanics of it quickly. She sees how people in the Alpha's circle often confuse proximity with intimacy, not realizing that they're replaceable the moment they stop feeding the Alpha's position. What looks like sisterhood or loyalty from the outside is often just a carefully maintained arrangement of convenience. The Sigma also notices how exhausting this can be for the Alpha herself. When every friendship is strategic, trust is always partial. She can never fully let her guard down because every relationship has strings attached. People are allies until they're competitors, supporters until they're irrelevant. For the Alpha, it becomes a cycle of constant maintenance, keeping people close enough to be useful, but never close enough to challenge her. Others see the Alpha's crowded circle and think it's proof of her power. But the Sigma female sees the truth. Real loyalty is rare in that space. The Alpha isn't surrounded by friends, she's surrounded by roles. And when the roles no longer serve the performance, they're written out of the script. The Sigma finds this revealing, because to her, friendship isn't about transaction, it's about truth. And that's something the Alpha often sacrifices without even realizing it. Number 4. The Alpha's leadership is fueled by insecurity more than confidence. Alpha females are often celebrated as natural-born leaders, the ones who step up, take charge, and set the pace for everyone else. But what a Sigma female notices, and what almost nobody else ever dares to see, is that this leadership is rarely driven by pure confidence. Underneath the charisma and dominance lies a quieter truth. Much of that authority is powered by insecurity, not certainty. The Alpha doesn't always lead because she's overflowing with strength. She leads because slowing down, stepping back, or fading into the background terrifies her. The Sigma female recognizes that the Alpha's constant need to be in control often comes from a fear of irrelevance. To her, silence feels like invisibility, and invisibility feels like erasure. That's why she pushes herself into the spotlight again and again. It's not just about achievement, it's about proving to herself and to others that she cannot be overlooked. On the surface, it looks like unstoppable drive, but the Sigma sees that it's often a battle against her own self-doubt. This is why the alpha's dominance can sometimes feel heavy-handed. She isn't just directing people because she knows best. She's directing them because being questioned threatens her sense of security. Her authority becomes a shield, a way of ensuring no one sees the softer truth, that deep down she fears not being enough without the titles, the praise, or the control. The Sigma female, who moves through life without needing external validation, can see how fragile this dynamic really is. To her, leadership is a choice, not a compulsion. She doesn't feel irrelevant when she's silent, and she doesn't need a throne to feel powerful. That's why she spots the cracks in the alpha's command, the constant proving, the restless energy, the hunger for recognition. What others interpret as raw confidence, the Sigma quietly understands as a defense mechanism. To the outside world, the alpha looks like the embodiment of fearlessness. But the Sigma female knows better. She sees that much of the alpha's dominance isn't about leading others. It's about silencing her own fear of fading into the background. And that truth changes the way leadership really looks when the mask finally slips. Number 5. They use loudness to hide fragility. Alpha females often present themselves as larger than life, always talking the loudest, laughing the hardest, and stepping into every space as if they own it. To most people, this reads as confidence, the kind of unstoppable energy that proves she was born to lead. But the Sigma female sees something different. She sees that this loudness isn't always about power. More often it's about fear. The alpha amplifies her presence because being ignored feels like death to her identity. The Sigma notices how carefully this loudness is maintained. It isn't just about volume in conversation, it's in the exaggerated gestures, the constant need to dominate discussions, the way she ensures her name is always in circulation. The alpha builds a wall of sound and spectacle around herself so no one notices the quiet fragility hiding underneath. If people stop reacting, if the attention fades even slightly, the alpha begins to unravel. That's why she keeps the volume high. It's not strength on display, it's survival. What makes this so revealing to the Sigma female is how unsustainable it is. Loudness creates an illusion of dominance, but it also reveals dependency. The alpha needs the audience, the reaction, the constant acknowledgement to keep fueling her performance. Without it, the mask slips and the fragility she works so hard to hide threatens to surface. Most people can't see this because they're too caught up in the spectacle. But the Sigma's quiet detachment allows her to see the mechanics behind the performance. For the Sigma female, true strength is silent. She doesn't need to announce herself or dominate a space to feel secure. That's why the alpha's constant noise doesn't impress her, it amuses her. She knows it's less about power and more about insecurity disguised as power. To the Sigma, the loudness is proof of the fragility it's meant to conceal. What everyone else celebrates as confidence, the Sigma understands as desperation not to be forgotten. The louder the alpha becomes, the clearer it is to the Sigma that silence is her greatest fear, and that is the fragility hiding behind all the noise. Number 6. They outsource validation while pretending they don't need it. Alpha females are often praised for their self-assurance, the way they stand tall as if nothing can shake them. To the outside world, they look like the ultimate example of independence. Women who don't need anyone's approval to shine. But the Sigma female notices the truth others overlook. Much of the alpha's confidence is borrowed. She doesn't build it from within. She outsources it to the people, the status, and the admiration surrounding her. The Sigma female sees how this plays out in subtle ways. The alpha thrives on applause, compliments, and recognition. She craves being acknowledged for her dominance, her style, her influence, and her achievements. Without that feedback loop, her confidence doesn't feel complete. She leans on status markers, titles, positions, associations, even luxury, to reinforce her identity. On the surface, it looks like self-belief. But the Sigma catches how fragile it is when stripped of external affirmation. Unlike the alpha, the Sigma doesn't outsource her validation. She doesn't need the group to tell her she's worthy, nor does she need social proof to confirm her power. That's why the Sigma spots the alpha's dependency so quickly. The alpha insists she's self-made, but her self-image is propped up by constant recognition. When the praise stops, the cracks show. The irony is that the alpha often hides this neediness behind her charisma. She performs independence so well that people assume she doesn't care what anyone thinks. But the sigma sees through the act. She notices how the alpha's energy dips when admiration isn't flowing, how she feels threatened by someone else's spotlight, and how quickly she recenters herself to stay relevant. To most people, the alpha's confidence feels bulletproof. To the sigma, it's a house built on rented scaffolding. The validation is never truly hers. It belongs to the group, to the audience, to the applause. Without it, the alpha doesn't know who she is. That's the subtle truth the sigma female catches. The alpha may roar the loudest, but she's echoing back the voices of everyone she needs to believe in her. And that's why, to the sigma, the alpha's confidence will always look like dependence wearing a crown. Number 7. They're more addicted to control than they are to freedom. Alpha females are often celebrated as symbols of independence, but a sigma female sees the contradiction hiding beneath that image. The alpha doesn't truly crave freedom the way people assume she does. What she craves is control. Independence would mean operating without needing to dominate. And that's something the alpha quietly avoids, because it would force her to face herself without the buffer of power. The sigma notices that the alpha's energy is always directed outward. She wants to shape others, lead groups, influence outcomes, and command attention. It looks like independence, but it's actually dependence on control. If the alpha isn't directing something or someone, she feels unsettled. True freedom, where she could exist without performing or leading, would strip away that constant need for authority. And in that silence, she would have to confront her insecurities and the parts of herself that aren't as invincible as she pretends. The sigma female sees this dynamic clearly because she values freedom in its purest form. For her, power isn't about controlling others. It's about being untouchable, even when standing alone. She doesn't need to bend the world around her to feel whole. That's why she notices how much the alpha resists solitude, resists spaces where control isn't possible. To the alpha, those spaces feel like loss. To the sigma, they feel like liberation. The irony is that the alpha often preaches independence. She talks about breaking barriers, owning her space, and being self-made. But the sigma notices that this independence is only ever expressed through dominance. It isn't about being free, it's about being on top. And when dominance isn't an option, the alpha struggles. She feels exposed, unanchored and restless without something or someone to rule over. This is why the sigma sometimes views alpha power as fragile. It's strong in environments that allow control, but it wobbles the moment control is removed. True freedom demands self-mastery. Control only demands management of others. The sigma understands the difference. She sees that the alpha isn't really chasing independence at all. She's chasing the safety of never having to sit alone with herself. And that's what makes her addicted to control, not freedom. Number 8. They preach empowerment but feed on dependence. Alpha females are often admired for their ability to rally people, inspire movements, and position themselves as champions of empowerment. They speak the language of strength, independence, and lifting others up. To most people, this looks noble, even selfless. But the sigma female notices the irony others overlook. Much of that empowerment is performative. The alpha doesn't truly want her followers to become independent equals. She needs them to remain dependent in order to sustain her position of power. The sigma sees how this plays out in the alpha's relationships. The alpha constantly pushes the narrative of growth and strength, but the moment someone in her circle becomes too self-sufficient, tension arises. Independence threatens the alpha because it means losing control. Her influence relies on others looking to her for direction, approval, and guidance. If those people stop needing her, her throne starts to wobble. Empowerment then becomes conditional. It's encouraged, but only up to the point where it doesn't rival her dominance. What fascinates the sigma female is how subtle this control can be. The alpha doesn't openly discourage independence. Instead, she masks dependence as loyalty. She keeps followers close by, rewarding obedience and sidelining those who think too freely. To the outside world, it looks like she's nurturing a strong tribe, but the sigma recognizes it for what it is, carefully maintained dependence that ensures the alpha's relevance never fades. This is where the sigma female stands apart. She doesn't seek power through followers. In fact, she has no interest in others leaning on her for their sense of strength. If anything, she prefers people who can stand on their own, because real empowerment doesn't threaten her, it mirrors her. That's why the sigma can see through the alpha's rhetoric so easily. She knows when empowerment is genuine and when it's just a cover for control. The truth the sigma notices is harsh but clear. The alpha's empire isn't built on making others truly free. It's built on ensuring they never quite outgrow their need for her. To most people, it looks like leadership. To the sigma, it looks like dependence disguised as empowerment, and that contradiction reveals everything. Number 9. They build thrones, not homes. Alpha females are often admired for their ambition, their ability to rally people, and the way they construct influence seemingly out of thin air. They build networks, empires, and hierarchies that command attention and respect. To outsiders, it looks like success, fulfillment, and control. But the sigma female sees a quieter, deeper truth. The alpha builds thrones, not homes. Her power structures are designed to elevate her status, not to nourish her soul. The sigma notices how focused the alpha is on achievement and visibility. Every project, every alliance, every relationship is a stepping stone toward more influence. There's brilliance in her design, but it comes at a cost. The spaces she occupies, the circles she surrounds herself with, and the energy she expends are all optimized for control and recognition, not for connection or comfort. Friends, family, and even romantic partners can become instruments in the architecture of her empire, rather than sources of genuine warmth. This is where the emptiness creeps in. Throne building requires constant performance, vigilance, and maintenance. People around her often admire her power, but few ever penetrate the walls she builds. Sigmas notice the subtle tension, the way the alpha can be celebrated by hundreds yet feel profoundly alone in private moments. There's no sanctuary, no space where she can drop the act, rest, or simply be herself without consequence. Power and influence demand presence, and presence demands energy, leaving little room for the quiet nourishment that real home provides. The sigma female sees this clearly because she doesn't measure her existence by applause, hierarchy, or visible success. She values depth over visibility, authenticity over dominance. That perspective allows her to spot the cracks that others overlook, the alpha's meticulous construction of an empire that elevates her name but often leaves her spirit hollow. The paradox is striking. The alpha's empire is awe-inspiring to most, but to the sigma, it reveals the cost of ambition without sanctuary. Thrones look magnificent from the outside, but they are rarely comfortable to inhabit alone. And that's the truth the sigma female catches. The alpha may conquer the world, but she often sacrifices the very spaces that make life feel whole. Number 10. Their rivalries are their real love language. Alpha females are often celebrated for their confidence, their energy, and their ability to dominate in any environment. People assume they thrive on friendships, collaborations, and sisterhoods. But the sigma female notices something far more revealing. The alpha's real fuel isn't intimacy, it's rivalry. Competition excites her more than connection ever could, and conflict energizes her in ways companionship never does. The sigma catches how this dynamic works. For the alpha, life is less about building bonds and more about keeping score. Even in friendships, there's an undercurrent of comparison. Who's more admired, who's more successful, who commands more attention? What most people mistake as camaraderie often hides a quiet contest. The alpha doesn't always want closeness. She wants an opponent. Rivalry gives her the adrenaline, the focus, and the validation that intimacy can't provide. This is why so many of the alpha's relationships eventually fracture. She thrives on tension, on that subtle push and pull where she's proving herself against someone else. When a relationship becomes too peaceful, too balanced, it loses its spark for her. She starts to get restless, even bored, because harmony doesn't give her the same thrill as competition. The sigma notices that this isn't about malice, it's about addiction. Rivalry becomes her love language, the way she measures relevance and the way she feels alive. The irony is that the alpha often disguises this under the language of ambition or drive. She'll say she loves challenges, that she pushes others to be better, that she thrives under pressure. And while that's true, the Sigma sees the deeper truth. It's not just challenges she loves, it's the rivalry itself. The presence of an equal or a challenger lights her up in ways affection never could. The Sigma female views this with a kind of detached clarity. For her, intimacy doesn't compete with rivalry. She doesn't need to prove herself through constant opposition. That's why she spots the alpha's pattern so easily. While others admire the alpha's fire, the Sigma quietly understands that much of that fire is fueled not by love, but by conflict. And that's why, to her, rivalry is the alpha's real heartbeat, the hidden love language that drives her more than connection ever will. Number 11. They're constantly at war with their own reflection. To the outside world, the alpha female looks unstoppable, confident, commanding, and always in control. People admire her as the image of power, but what the Sigma female sees, and what most never notice, is the silent war the alpha fights every day with her own reflection. Beneath the polished exterior, there's a deep discomfort with looking ordinary, with being anything less than extraordinary. The Sigma notices how carefully the alpha curates herself. Every move, every word, every appearance designed to maintain the illusion of superiority. It isn't just about ambition, it's about escaping the fear of blending in. To the alpha, being average feels like erasure, as if her existence loses meaning without the constant glow of being seen as exceptional. That's why she spends so much energy shaping an identity that others can admire, envy, or even fear. It's not just for the world, it's for the mirror too. What makes this struggle so revealing to the Sigma is that the alpha can never truly rest. Even in private, she feels the weight of expectation pressing down. The reflection becomes her judge, reminding her of every flaw, every weakness, every trace of ordinariness she works so hard to hide. To most people, her confidence looks unshakable. To the Sigma, it looks exhausting, a performance that never ends because the harshest audience isn't outside, it's staring back at her. The Sigma female, who is comfortable in her solitude and unbothered by outside validation, notices the difference instantly. She doesn't see the mirror as a battlefield, it's simply a reflection, nothing more. But for the alpha, it's a constant measuring stick of whether she's still living up to the role she's created. When she sees strength, she feels powerful. When she sees vulnerability, she feels threatened. The battle never really stops. This is why the Sigma often views alpha power with caution. It may look dazzling, but it's fueled by an inner war that can never truly be won. Others admire the alpha for her confidence. The Sigma sees that confidence as armor, forged in the fire of self-doubt. And behind every commanding glance in the mirror, the alpha is quietly asking herself the question she fears most. Am I enough without the performance? Number 12. They weaponize femininity while denying they do. Alpha females are often admired for their strength, assertiveness, and ability to command attention. To most people, they appear almost untouchable, a perfect balance of power and poise. But the Sigma female notices a subtler, far more calculated layer beneath the surface. The alpha weaponizes her femininity while pretending it doesn't exist. Publicly, she projects toughness and control, masking any hint of vulnerability. Privately, however, that same vulnerability becomes a tool, a hidden weapon used when raw dominance fails to get results. The Sigma sees how this plays out. The alpha understands that strength alone doesn't always bend the world to her will. Sometimes the rules require a different kind of leverage. She can soften, charm, or appeal in ways that feel genuine to the outside observer, but are actually carefully calculated maneuvers to maintain influence. Vulnerability isn't weakness for her, it's strategy. It's deployed selectively, quietly, and with precision, ensuring that she always has multiple avenues to achieve what she wants. What the Sigma female finds fascinating is the contrast between the public and private personas. To the world, the alpha is all sharp edges, confidence, and dominance. To the Sigma, she's also someone who understands the subtle power of perception. How appearing approachable, sympathetic, or even feminine at the right moment can tip the scales in her favor. She doesn't rely on this all the time, but she keeps it in her arsenal, knowing that true influence often requires adaptability. The Sigma female, who doesn't need to manipulate perception to feel secure, quickly spots this dynamic. She notices the moments where charm replaces confrontation, where softness replaces force, and where the alpha leverages traits others assume are weaknesses into instruments of control. That's why the Sigma isn't impressed by the performance. It's a calculated game, not a reflection of true vulnerability. The truth the Sigma sees is simple but sharp. The alpha doesn't deny her power, she simply expands it. When dominance isn't enough, femininity becomes the silent, lethal weapon. And that's what makes her presence so unpredictable, formidable, and quietly intimidating to anyone who truly understands the layers beneath her surface. The world admires alpha females for their charisma, dominance, and apparent invincibility. But the Sigma female sees what most cannot: the intricate machinery behind the performance. Every move, every word, every carefully curated relationship is part of a larger strategy designed to maintain control, command attention, and protect against the vulnerabilities no one else is allowed to see. She notices the fragility behind the loudness, the borrowed confidence, the conditional loyalty, and the relentless pursuit of dominance disguised as empowerment. She understands the silent battles with mirrors, the subtle weaponization of femininity, and the cost of building thrones instead of homes. To the Sigma, these observations are not judgments, they are truths. The alpha's brilliance is undeniable, but it comes at a hidden price: dependence on others, constant performance, and an inner tension that rarely shows on the surface. The Sigma female navigates the same world without needing validation, without performing for attention, and without relying on others to define her power. That perspective allows her to see beneath the mask, to recognize both the strength and the vulnerability that coexist in ways the world often misses. This isn't about diminishing the alpha. It's about revealing a reality that most people overlook. It's about understanding the complex layers that make alpha females so magnetic, so formidable, and yet, in ways only a Sigma can perceive, so human. The Sigma female watches, learns, and understands, not in envy, but in clarity. She sees the power, the strategy, and the cracks, and in doing so, she decodes the hidden language of dominance, influence, and survival. If you've been captivated by this breakdown, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with anyone who wants to see beyond the surface. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Your perspective might just reveal even more hidden truths. This is the kind of insight that changes the way you see power, personality, and the invisible currents driving the people around us.